We are going to read the whole of Proverbs chapter 10 today. Proverbs chapter 10. The Proverbs of Solomon. A wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son is a sorrow to his mother. Treasures gained by wickedness do not profit, but righteousness delivers from death. The Lord does not let the righteous go hungry, but he thwarts the craving of the wicked. A slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. He who gathers in summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps in harvest is a son who brings shame. Blessings are on the head of the righteous, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. The memory of the righteous is a blessing, but the name of the wicked will rot. The wise of heart will receive commandments, but a babbling fool will come to ruin. Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but he who makes his ways crooked will be found out. Whoever winks the eye causes trouble, but a babbling fool will come to ruin. The mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. I'm sorry, I'm still trying to get over that cough that I had 2 weeks ago. Hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all offenses. On the lips of him who has understanding, wisdom is found, but a rod is for the back of him who lacks sense. The wise lay up knowledge, but the mouth of a fool brings ruin near. A rich man's wealth is his strong city, the poverty of the poor is their ruin. The wage of the righteous leads to life, the gain of the wicked to sin. Whoever heeds instruction is on the path to life, but he who rejects reproof leads others astray. The one who conceals hatred has lying lips, and whoever utters slander is a fool. When words are many, transgression is not lacking, but whoever restrains his lips is prudent. The tongue of the righteous is choice silver, the heart of the wicked is of little worth. The lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for a lack of sense. The blessings of the Lord make rich, and he adds no sorrow with it. Doing wrong is like a joke to the fool, but wisdom is pleasure to a man of understanding. What the wicked dreads will come upon him, but the desire of the righteous will be granted. When the tempest passes, the wicked is no more, but the righteous is established forever. Like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to those who send him. The fear of the Lord prolongs life, but the years of the wicked will be short. The hope of the righteous brings joy, but the expectation of the wicked will perish. The way of the Lord is a stronghold to the blameless, but destruction to evildoers. The righteous will never be removed, but the wicked will not dwell in the land. The mouth of the righteous brings forth wisdom, but the perverse tongue will be cut off. The lips of the righteous know what is acceptable, but the mouth of the wicked what is perverse. Okay, I think it's going to be a struggle for me to get through this this whole thing with this cough. Basically, like last time we did this, if you remember, I think it was probably visible, but I was getting worse and worse as the evening drew on, and that's why I kind of rushed the discussion bit at the end, because I was feeling so blah by the end of it, and I actually had fever that night in the end. So when you guys went and tucked yourselves into bed, I was sitting here. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. I'll see if I can talk while sucking on this. But yeah, I was shivering, and yeah. So anyway, the Lord is good. It only lasted one night. So can you all hear me? Okay, if I've got this in my mouth. Yeah. If it disturbs anyone, just let me know, and I'll stick it back in here. And we'll see.
You're recording this?
Yeah, it's okay. Whoever listens to the recording can just deal with the fact that they don't get the banter that we get here, and it will make them want to be here, and so they'll move all the way to Yash just to come to this study. Yeah, I'm speaking about you. Okay, so today we begin building on the deep foundation of wisdom that we've been building for the last 13 sessions. So if you can believe, we spent more than 13 weeks, because we took a break for summer, and we did this only once every 2 weeks. But we spent a lot of time digging into Solomon's lesson on what wisdom is, and now we're ready to build on the foundation that we built on, and that starts immediately with the subject of righteousness. Now, righteousness is one of those words that we often think we understand. God is righteous. We have to be righteous people. We often think we understand it without paying much attention to what it actually means. So for the sake of making sure we're all on the same page, I'll simply say that righteousness is being in the right state of mind, doing the right actions. In the English language, it's pretty simple: righteousness, being in the right. And that would be according to God's law. So the righteous man is the one who keeps God's law. In Romanian, it's pretty helpful. You say neplinhanire, which is fără prihană. So it's the same thing there. So without any badness in it, any. I'm not sure how to translate prihană in English, but like malice or something. You don't have anything bad in you. It's basically the idea. And so that's our topic today: to build righteousness on the foundation of wisdom. And righteous living follows that pursuit of wisdom. So we pursue wisdom, we start digging the hole, and as we dig that hole, then we start building the foundation. And this is shown to us in various random statements. Chapter 10, chapter 11 of Proverbs are very much focused on speaking about righteousness. And they are random statements that Solomon probably made over the course of his life, and someone just recorded them whenever he made something that they're like, oh yeah, that's a wise statement. So I think I've said it before, but if anyone's heard of Martin Luther's table talk, no? Table talk is basically like all the statements he made around the dinner table when his friends were present, and they just wrote them down and then put them all in a big book one day. That's essentially what the Proverbs are from this point on. Is Solomon's wise sayings. And they are random, but I think, and this is just my kind of theory on the matter, that the chronicler that recorded all of these and put them together, he kind of started off trying to group them all together, but there were just so many that he just kind of gave up in the end. So I like to think that he's just sitting there like, okay, right, we can stick this together, and we put this one here, and then later on he comes across another verse that he didn't put here, but oh no, the ink is already settled and it's dry. No, it's kind of funny to think about, but to me at least, it seems like he's trying to structure everything at the start and then just kind of gives up and just says, right, we're just going to put whatever comes in and we just write it down. And I think any of us that have gone to university can relate to that. So, as far as chapter 10 goes here, we first off start with discussions on work, and then we move on to life, and speech is mentioned, and by the end the chronicler kind of tries to put that all together. But the overarching roof over all of these subjects is righteousness, which we know is founded in wisdom. So you are wise, because you are wise you start practicing righteousness, and practicing righteousness looks like what the chronicler is telling us through Solomon's words here. Okay, so starting this off with the subject of work, we read the Proverbs of Solomon. So basically, for at least 10 chapters and a lot more, all that we're going to read is come from Solomon. Just the course of his life, all the good things that he said. There is a point where other people's sayings get put into that as well, but most of this is Solomon from this point. And so that's just something that we can appreciate what God gave him. Like, God gave him this wisdom. It's very clear in the rest of Scripture. God gave Solomon this wisdom. So effectively what we're seeing when we see these are the Proverbs of Solomon, we're effectively seeing this is God's wisdom. This is God's wisdom through Solomon's experience. It's given to us to help us live our Christian lives. And so the verse continues. A wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son is a sorrow to his mother. So wisdom in youth affects the household. That can affect the household negatively, and it can affect the household positively. So if someone goes to school and they're part of their household, and if you're not living in your parents' house these days, as most of us aren't, think about when you have children, and just apply this to when you have children. But if your kid goes to school and does well at school, that will be a blessing to your household, because they can go and get a good job, they can go to university, they give your household a good reputation. However, if they act foolishly at school, if they're messing around all the time, or they start hanging out with the bad guys, or if they start taking drugs or something in school, then that brings negative connotations, not just to them, but to the entire household. It's, first of all, the job of the parents, of course, to cultivate a positive and wise attitude in their kids, but it's also the responsibility of the child to understand, look, I have to do this not just for myself, but for my household as well. So even if we're not, most of us, living in our parents' households anymore, we can still apply that as we go, and we can apply it to looking back at the mistakes we made, and maybe we need to ask forgiveness to our parents, or we can look forward to the future when our kids are grown up, and we need to teach them how to be, so that they don't make the same mistakes that we did when we went to school. And as Charles Bridge rather said, it is as much the will of God that the young should gather knowledge as a farmer gathers harvest. It is as much the will of God that the young should gather knowledge as the farmer gathers his harvest. And that's how we should use all the resources that are around us to grow in wisdom and to practice righteousness. The wise young man, the wise young woman will see what's around him. He'll see what's available to harvest this righteous attitude, and he will or she will take advantage of that for all their life. So one of the things that follows wisdom is a proper attitude towards work. Has anyone here seen the movie Limitless with Bradley Cooper, Dincolo de Limite? Yeah. Raresh is smiling. You've seen it, right? No? None of you seen that movie? Yeah, he takes the pills, yeah. So basically the premise of the movie is that the brain only functions in a certain percentage of its capacity. And if you take this pill, then your brain opens up, and I don't know if it's 100%, but basically you can have a lot more. You're looking a bit confused there, Andrea. Yeah, it's just a movie.
It's a movie.
Yeah, it's a movie. Yeah, it's a good movie. You should watch it. And basically he takes these pills, and suddenly his eyes are open, and he's like super intelligent. He's super smart. He can work everything out. He can basically listen to a language and learn it. It's really cool. But what's the first thing he does when he takes the pills? He goes home and he sees that his entire apartment's in a mess. So what does he do? He says, I can't work like this. I've got to write this book, and I can't do this. So he cleans up his entire apartment. And the reason I'm saying that is because that's what we do when we grow in wisdom. We realize the mess in our lives, and we start acting appropriately, and we do righteous works in order to rectify the mess that's in our lives. We clean our lives up. And so knowing this, Solomon has said in verse 2, treasure gained by wickedness does not profit, but righteousness delivers from death. So we begin to see the overarching idea of righteousness here. Be wise, that makes you desire righteousness. And if you desire righteousness, then you'll desire honest living, which means working hard. And so righteousness will affect every area of our life, and that will cause us to work hard. It will cause us to work with a good and proper attitude. So let me ask you guys this. Is anyone here in a situation at work right now where you might be tempted to get personal gain through wickedness, either money or reputation or power or something? Well, what Solomon's telling us here is that ultimately that will not profit you. What that is to say is that you may have earthly treasures, you may have earthly standing and reputation, but other things will suffer. Your conscience will eat away with you, because you'll know that you got that money and that position by doing something wrong. People may witness you doing those things, and they'll see that you're a Christian and you're doing all these bad things, and they'll say, well, the Christians do that. I don't want anything to do with Jesus. So the suffering that we go through for doing unrighteous things, for doing wickedness to get material possessions, it is never worth it. And just as a practical example, maybe one of you has an intern at work, or a newbie or something, and that you've made a mistake, but you could blame the intern on the mistake, or the newbie at work. You could pass it off as if it was their mistake. Well, what are you going to do? You could do it, no one would know, and you're going to get away with it, but your conscience is going to eat you up inside. You're going to know that you did the wrong thing. And so just think about that, because a lot of people do blame interns and new people at work when they really shouldn't. And I'll come back to that idea. I'll kind of tease it throughout the lesson here. But basically, the only way to avoid this is to practice righteousness and let righteousness dictate the way forward. Okay? So we don't look at the situation and say, what can I gain from this? We look at the situation and we say, what would righteousness tell me to do? If righteousness was a person, what would it tell me to do? Now, you might have to suffer. For example, you may have to take a pay cut. You may have to lose some money, because if you didn't blame the intern, then you're going to get blamed, and you might lose money or a position. What's the opposite of promotion? Demotion? Demoted? Yeah. You might get demoted. but for righteousness' sake, that's a good thing. And know, from verse 3, the Lord does not let the righteous go hungry, but he thwarts the craving of the wicked. So God will provide, even if you choose. He will provide, even if you, because you practiced righteousness, you had to suffer. Even if you made mistakes, but it was the righteous thing to do the right thing, then even if you have to suffer those bad things, pay cuts or whatever, God will provide for you. So it's worth it. It's worth it. Even materially, it's worth it. And but just know as well that if you choose the path of righteousness, then as our proverb here says, you will be thwarted one day. Like, you'll be found out for what you did. You will be judged one day for what you did. So of course we know that it's not worth it. So with this in mind, we can then learn verse 4. A slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. So by the way, just going back to verse 3 there, that applies to me as a missionary as well. It's so easy for us as missionaries, I'm sure Daniel can tell you the same, to kind of look at people coming to visit the mission field from Western countries, or to going back to speaking in churches and spending time with people. It's very easy to use those situations as a way to get people to give us money, and to just look at people as money bags. But what we need to do is we just need to be in those moments, be with those people, and if they see that we're people that they want to support, then they will. And I've known missionaries to flat out lie about their situation just to get money. Most of them just exaggerate. But, like, you've got missionaries that might come from Romania and they'll go back to America or the UK or something, and they'll take a load of pictures of the villages, the poor villages, and they'll say, "This is Romania," and they'll make people think that that's everything to do in Romania. Yeah, if they're working in a ministry like that, sure, but a lot of them aren't. A lot of them are working here in the cities, and they'll say, I'm not speaking about anyone that any of us know, just for the record as well. So yeah, that even applies to us as missionaries. So focusing again on verse 4, righteous choices are coupled with decisive attitudes towards the work that we do. So we will decisively work, and we will decisively work well in a way that's pleasing to God. So don't slack at work, even on the more boring or annoying parts of your days. Work hard, and God will provide for you. It's a really simple matter. You work, you'll be provided for. If you don't work, if you slack, God won't provide for you, because that's the natural way that he's chosen to provide for us. So bringing this back around to the household, we read in verse 5, he who gathers in summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps in harvest is a son who brings shame. This is a way to say that not only we suffer if we don't choose the right path. I've already applied that to the household with parents, but it could be at work as well with your bosses. If you don't do your job when you're supposed to, and you take a nap, if any of you guys are working in IT, as some people have told me in this city, they like to work from home so they can take naps through the day. The Bible's telling us not to do that. It's telling us to work hard when we can. Of course, I know that some of you IT guys, you have moments where there is literally nothing to do. You're on the bench, I think you say, or whatever. I don't know how it works, but when you're supposed to be working, you've got to be working. And again, that applies to me. I work from home. No one's watching over me, so I have to be double diligent. I have to make sure that I'm using my time effectively when I'm working from home. When I go out to the streets to evangelize, I have to keep myself focused on the fact that I'm here to evangelize people, and I'm not here to just sit on my phone and waste an hour. It's very easy for me to do that. So yeah, if we don't do what we're supposed to, not just we will suffer. You think that you miss a key moment in work because you're too slack and you're sleeping on the job, that could make a whole chain of events which eventually cause your company to fall apart, which could lead to your entire company losing its job, a company worth of people losing its job. So that's just to say that when we're lazy, when we don't do what we're supposed to do, quite often it's not just us that suffer. A lot of people around us often suffer as well. So knowing this, the first work idea here, it closes in verse 6. Blessings are on the head of the righteous, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. Yeah, can someone go and get that? Yeah, you have to press the middle button and then press the unlock button. Hopefully it'll work. Yeah, sorry, where was I? verse 6. Did I read it? Yes, I read it. Okay. So, who wants to be blessed? Let me stand up like a charismatic proclaimer. Who wants to be blessed, right? Who wants to be blessed? Well, we all want to be blessed, right? Well, the answer from Proverbs here is work hard with a righteous attitude. Did it work? Okay, I hope so too. If not, he can climb up the balcony. So, if we choose wickedness, then we are... Yeah, so we know we have to work hard, but if we choose the opposite path, the wicked path, then we are concealing violence, as Scripture says. And you might think, well, if I just tell a white lie, I'm not really committing violence, am I? But you've got to think about the chain of events that might come from our actions. And if you tell a white lie at work, like, oh no, I wasn't sleeping, and then someone else gets blamed for it, well, you've done violence to that person, haven't you? And so we have to be careful. Likewise, if you blame your intern or your newbie at work for not doing the thing that you were supposed to do, or doing the thing that you did, you're wishing violence on that person because you're blaming them for what you yourself did. So keep that in mind as we go through the next section, which is about life and how we speak. And then we'll come back and pull it all together, hopefully, at the end. Verse 7 tells us, and we will get a bit faster, don't worry. I know we've been doing this for 20 minutes already, but we will speed up. Verse 7 tells us, the memory of the righteous is a blessing, but the name of the wicked will rot. Now, ask yourselves this. If any of us in this room have to be remembered for the next couple of 100 years, what do you want to be remembered for? Something good, right. What would that good thing be? Because a lot of people, especially preachers today, they say, I want to be known as a man who preached the word faithfully. Great, that's a good thing. I want to be known as a man who knew his Bible. Great, that's a good thing. But that is not... Could you open the door there, Andrea, just so that Natty knows to come in? Thanks. That is not what Proverbs is telling us here. Proverbs is telling us here that we want to be remembered because we live righteous lives. And that we forsook wickedness. Now, if any of you heard the statement, I think the Puritans used to say it, live well, die, and be forgotten. Anyone heard that before? No. Well, that's what they were saying. They were basically saying, live for Christ, do everything you should, and then when you're dead, no one's going to care about you anymore, and you've done your duty. Have a seat then, Natty.
Yeah. Reached by the end, I suppose.
Sorry?
Reached by the end of the...
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, so the actual reality should be, and I respect what they're saying, there's a place for what they're saying as well. Really, it should be live righteously, and if you have to be remembered by the world after you die, then let it be because you lived a righteous life. Not because you did something bad, not because you were just this great theologian, not because you were this great preacher or anything like that. Not because you did great ministry in your church, you reached the homeless, or because you swept the floors in the church. I don't know. You were a great secretary to the preacher. I don't know what people do in churches. Let that be what you're remembered for, the righteousness, the righteous life. Not the... we're in Proverbs 10, Natty.
I don't have my Bible.
Okay, no problem. Not theology, not the word, not anything else. Righteousness, because you lived a Christ-like life. So, hundreds of years from now, when Christians look at our lives, what are they going to see? And that's a really serious question that we all need to contemplate. What are they going to see? If someone writes a journal or a diary of us one day, and they say, Robert Norman did this, what is he going to say? Am I going to be known because I held loads of Bible studies? Or am I going to be known because I loved people? I visited them in hospital. I went to them when they were suffering. I did the chocolate thing. I brought them chocolate while they were doing their exams, stuff like that. That's what I want to be remembered for. All the knowledge in my brain is going to die with me. Okay. Yes, we can record sermons. Yes, I can write books and whatever, but ultimately all that dies. If I have to be remembered, I pray it will be purely because I lived a righteous life. So asking this humbles us, and it prepares us for Solomon's next statement in verse 8. The wise of heart will receive commandments, but a babbling fool will come to ruin. So if you remember last time, we talked about how we talk to people and how we listen to them and how we can gain in wisdom. So that remains the same for this verse. Listen more, learn to ask questions, and be slow to speak. Because it's all too easily to become this babbling fool. tend to think myself as the babbling fool quite often, actually, because I'm too quick to jump in and speak to people and say, right, this is what you need to hear right now, rather than listening to them and being ready to listen. So let's try to be the kind of people that ask more questions before we speak, before we open our mouths. Otherwise, history may just remember us as these people that were too quick to speak, these idiots that were saying, all these things. Robert Norman put his political views about the Romanian election on Facebook, and that's what we remember him for. He stood strong against whichever one the majority of people in this room are against. I know it's a difficult situation. Like Trump versus Gamal is nothing compared to this, right? Yeah, so yeah, and I fear for some people that are very active on Facebook, actually, because they are faithful in what they're saying, but they're saying it in a very strict and arrogant way, a very angry way, and that's how the world is going to remember them one day. They're going to be remembered as angry preachers rather than people that love people and were alongside people and just love people so much that they wanted to see them come away from their errors and got alongside them rather than just spilling everything on Facebook. So yeah, and I just want to be honest. Like, I'm a biblical counselor. I did a master's in biblical counseling, and I struggle with this. I struggle to not be the babbling fool. Some of you in this room have done counseling with me, and I jump in too quick. I don't gather enough information, and then I jump in. And the thing is when I am counseling someone, I need to ask as many questions as possible to get as much information as possible, in case I give the wrong advice. You see, and I'm so quick to give my advice because I think I know everything that's right. I'm the babbling fool then, right? But if I listen more, then I'm displaying a trait of wisdom. So if we're willing to listen, we can walk better in this life. Verse 9. Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but he who makes his ways crooked will be found out. If our ways are led by God's righteousness, then we won't be looking behind our shoulders all the time. We'll be going straight. And that idea that Solomon's showing us here is that righteousness is a straight path, but when we make it crooked, it's because we're trying to get around what we're supposed to do. So we're trying to make a side path where we can just and okolesk, what's that in English? Yeah, well, there's a word for that in English, though, no? Shortcut, yeah, take a shortcut around it, or a long cut to get around it. The idea is that we come off the straight path when we try to avoid doing what we're supposed to do, even though we know it's right. And so we're being called to look at the straight path and go down the straight path. There may be obstacles, there may be things in it that we don't want to do, that we're scared to do, but if we try and take those side routes, then the scripture's clear here. We will be found out eventually. Someone will catch us at what we're doing. So we listen to instruction and we walk that straight path of righteousness. What else? Verse 10. Whoever winks the eye causes trouble, but a babbling fool will come to ruin. This means we're not going to live in cunningness, viklania. We're not going to be plotting, and we're not going to be planning against others for our own benefit. So again, with the idea with the intern, you've got an intern or a newbie in your workplace. You're not going to try and make this plan to boost your own reputation or your financial situation by pushing him down. You're going to treat him as an equal in your workplace, and you're going to be nice to him. So our speech will be more pure if we do all of this. We will avoid saying foolish things, and we'll do that because we know the truth of Matthew 12. If we want to read Matthew 12, verse 36. Whenever I read this cuts me to the heart, because I know that so many of the things I say are just so stupid and foolish and pointless. Anyone that's known me for longer than a year will know that that's definitely true of me. So Jesus says, I tell you, on the day of judgment, people will give account for every careless word they speak. Now, is that not convicting? Is that not scary? And I just think about all the stupid jokes I've made in my life, all the silly things I've said that I didn't need to say, all the hurtful things I've said to people. I'm going to stand accountable for all of that. So if what Solomon is telling us in Proverbs right now is not resonating with you, I beg you to really take seriously Jesus' words. And so instead of speaking foolish, we want our words to be beneficial to other people, which is what Solomon addresses in verse 11. The mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. So learning to listen helps us gather wisdom, and so does choosing righteousness in any given situation. So righteousness is something that we have in Christ. He has given us his righteousness, but every day is presented with opportunities to either do wickedness or righteousness, and we have to constantly keep choosing the path of righteousness every day. no matter what the situation. And so, if you want to be remembered well and also give words of wisdom to others, then you have to back it up. You have to live according to what's being told to you. You can't just tell someone you don't have the right to be angry and then go and have a fight with your mother or your mother-in-law. Good job Emma's taking care of Abigail right now. I'm just kidding. It's just, I know the recording's on. It's okay. She won't listen to it. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. It's not, just going back to that idea of being remembered. It's not about what you know. It's not about who you know. It's not about how many books you've read. It's not even about how well you can hold a lesson or a sermon in church. It's not even about how well you can listen, how well you can worship. It's not about any of that. It's all about drinking from wisdom, and we do that by listening to what other people have to say to us. And if we do that, if we have a mentor, if we have someone that's wise that we're constantly learning from, or several people, then one day we can also be those fountains to other people. And that's exactly taking an application from how I do these studies. I study the passage, I read all the commentaries and see what they can teach me, and then I teach you guys. And then you guys can apply this to your lives, and so on. You can teach other people what you've learned here. If you're learning anything, I hope you are, but I know my insufficiencies as a teacher. So, drink from other wells wherever applicable and wherever it's good to do so, because we know it's not always good to do so. Okay, so having said all of that, verse 12 and kind of changes the gear a little bit. And it seems a bit randomly placed, but we know that the structure is kind of weird here, so... The chronicler maybe stopped to have a glass of wine or something and just came back and put this one right here rather than way out towards the end. So in verse 12 he says, hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all offenses. And I think that really does still connect us to the fountain idea, quite honestly. I don't know if that was the chronicler's intention or not, but I can see it happening. How am I supposed to speak to someone who's struggling with hatred towards someone else if I also am struggling with hatred towards someone else? I need to clean my own well. I need to clean my own fountain before I can spray the water out to clean people so they can drink from it, right? I can't be harboring these things in my heart if I'm going to go to someone and say, hey, brother, I need you to be wise here. I need you to stop hating these people. And again, I've been very open with you this evening. That's something I struggle with, If someone wrongs me badly enough, it's hard for me to get over that. I struggle to forgive people when they wrong me. I clam up, I get angry, I get hateful, I get bitter. Suddenly, nothing that person says or does is something that I can see is good. And I think we can all relate to that on some level, but that's the struggle I have in my heart. So whenever someone comes to me and says, hey, Robert, I'm struggling with hatred, can you counsel me on this? I'm like, oh my goodness. But again, that's why we need honesty, right? If we're honest about those things, then we can say, look, I can counsel you on this. I can give you the biblical applications you need. But I need you to know that I really struggle with this in my heart as well. See? And so we have to be righteous before we can tell other people how to be righteous, right? Yeah. No, that doesn't mean that we have perfect righteousness. It doesn't mean that we've perfected the problem that we're talking to other people about. It just means that we aren't living a double life where I'm living with this sin and pretending I don't, and then judging someone else for having that sin. I don't know. Maybe I'm attacking these guys a bit too much, but these hate preachers, these guys that go on Facebook all the time and they write all their statements and make all their podcasts. It's I found in my ministry that if I speak to heretics and false teachers and people that have bad theology, if I talk to them gently, that has a way bigger effect on them than if I just get in their face and say, hey, how can you believe this? Why are you doing this? And I'm not perfect at that. I resemble the hate preacher more than I do Jesus. That's for sure. But the point is that we don't win people. We might win a few people intellectually with arguments if we're hate preaching, but ultimately, what's the point if we're not doing this in righteousness? What's the point if we're not speaking the truth in love? Speaking the truth in love and living this righteous life in this case. what you want to do is you want to get alongside those people that are in the bad teaching or in the false teaching. Be their friend, be part of their lives, invest in their lives. It's too easy for us to just go on and write a blog or write a Facebook post or make a podcast or a video and attack people from a distance. But if we want to live righteously, we need to be alongside people, right? In everything we do. So that includes whether you're against someone's theology or if you have a problem with someone at work and you need to help them correct themselves. Yelling at them is not going to help. Be alongside them. Say, look, I understand this. I went through this. I was a newbie once. I'm going to help you. So if this is the case, then verses 13 and 14 tell us, on the lips of him who has understanding, wisdom is found, but a rod is for the back of him who lacks sense. The wise lay up knowledge, but the mouth of a fool brings ruin near. So people will want to learn from you. That's the point that Solomon's making here. If you're a nice person and you're not a hate preacher, people will want to learn from you, and that's a good thing. So love people. Show them Christ when you speak to them, rather than attacking them or finding like those little nuggets of areas of their lives where, oh, that's not a good thing. Focus on the good that Christ is doing in someone's life if it's a Christian. Yeah. So moving on, Solomon then informs us in verses 15 and 16. A rich man's wealth is his strong city. The poverty of the poor is their ruin. The wage of the righteous leads to life. The gain of the wicked to sin. And that's just a fancy way of reminding us that we get the fruits of our labors. If we work, if we're righteous and we're wise, then we'll get good things as a general truth. If we are lazy, if we live for folly, if we're wicked, then we'll have the fruits of that labor as well. We've talked a lot about that, so we won't do any more. But then, remembering that, we read verse 17. Whoever heeds instruction is on the path of life, but he who rejects reproof leads others astray. You may have even heard something today, just even today, that could have saved you from making big mistakes down the line, but you've said, no, I'm not going to listen to that. You've chosen to reject it. So that's why we need to take stock of our days, take stock of our weeks, take stock of our months, our years, and look back and think, has someone tried to help me and to understand something that I was making wrong? Have I heeded the instructions that God has laid out for me in life through other people? Or have I been rejecting it? And so the next 4 verses kind of conclude this life tongue matter for now. Verses 18 to 21. The one who conceals hatred has lying lips, and whoever utters slander is a fool. When words are many, transgression is not lacking, but whoever restrains his lips is prudent. The tongue of the righteous is choice silver, the heart of the wicked is of little worth. The lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for a lack of sense. So if we are to speak well, then we must live well. That's basically how I'll conclude this section. We are informed by God's word and righteousness on how to live, and we must live according to that. Okay, so the final section takes us throughout to the end of the chapter, and I'm really going to speed through this because it's pretty much just a recap of everything we've already seen. There's not much new information here. So we conclude this starting at verse 22. The blessing of the Lord makes rich, and he adds no sorrow to it. And basically, we know from previous lessons that God generally blesses materially people that do right, do well. That's not prosperity gospel. It's not saying that God will absolutely give you good because you've had good, or rather he won't give you good material things because you've given good material things or you've done good things. It's just a general truth that when we live the path of righteousness, then there is material blessing sometimes that comes along with that. In contrast, we see the wicked in verse 23. Doing wrong is like a joke to a fool, but wisdom is pleasure to a man of understanding. So that's basically saying that fools don't take their wrong actions seriously. Meanwhile, the wise accept the gravity of wisdom and the gravity of every situation that they're in, whether it can lead them further into wisdom or further into folly. And they find pleasure in that. They find pleasure in... I've written some very tiny notes here and I can't read my own handwriting.
I'm just thinking what your word might be.
I've written... Well, I can read what I've written. I just don't know what I'm trying to say.
Oh,
yeah. Let's just move on. I'll look at it again during the discussion point. And yeah, I'm sorry. I've been very disconnected today. I'll try and give you a good conclusion at least. So verse 24 says, "What the wicked dreads will come upon him, but the desire of the righteous will be granted. When the tempest passes, the wicked is no more, but the righteous is established forever. So nothing new here again. We know that God keeps a hold of those who live the righteous path of wisdom, and he scatters to the winds, as Psalm 1 says, those who live for wickedness. Now, verse 26, on the other hand, is very strange and does need some explanation. Like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to those who send him. Basically, what that's saying is that he's annoying to everyone. So, like, if you get smoke in your eyes, what do? Cry. Your eyes start watering. So basically, there's a joke here that this stupid person is so annoying that he's making you cry with how stupid he is. That's basically it. Yeah. So it's kind of a little funny idea there.
And vinegar to the mouth is the breath of the person.
Ooh, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that.
It smells bad.
Yeah, it smells bad.
Bad to be around.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Okay, so and then verses 27 to 30, they remind us the fear of the Lord prolongs life, but the years of the wicked will be short. The hope of the righteous brings joy, but the expectation of the wicked will perish. The way of the Lord is a stronghold to the blameless, but destruction to evildoers. The righteous will never be removed, but the wicked will dwell in the land. Will not dwell in the land. I'm sorry. Yeah. So again, like we've seen this so many times. All these ideas: the fear of God, the joy of righteousness, and wisdom being held strong by God. And I don't think we need to recapitulate any of that. But if anyone has any questions, do ask during the discussion time. But the last word there is land, and I think that's very important for us to note, because to the Jewish context that this was written to, land was important. Like, this is our home. God has given us this home, and at this point they were on the cusp of losing it because they were living in unrighteousness. And so it's ironic that Solomon himself, who was living in unrighteousness, writes this saying, if you are wicked, you will not be able to dwell in this land anymore. And what he did with his life led to that chain of other people suffering, because he was unrighteous. So God judged the nation with another unrighteous king, and it's so on and so on. And we know that the people ended up out of their land and in exile. So I'm not saying this is a prophecy, but it is just that kind of biblical irony. God is saying, look, this is about to happen to you. You don't realize it, but it's about to happen to you. And so we need to be careful of that as well. We need to be careful not to fall into such traps ourselves when we're looking at wise words from the Bible, or when people are telling us, if you do that thing, you will suffer.
I have a question. Is it the wrong thing if I interpret it when I read it myself? I interpret it differently. For example,
can we address that during the discussion
okay.
time? Yeah, I'll keep the recording going for now, and we'll get them. I'll keep the question. I will answer that. Okay, so verse 31 to 32 concludes the whole chapter. The mouth of the righteous brings forth wisdom, but the perverse tongue will be cut off. The lips of the righteous know what is acceptable, but the mouth of the wicked what is perverse. So let that just be an encouragement to everyone at the end here. Let it be an encouragement for us to all speak properly and to act properly. And basically, in conclusion, we've been encouraged today to live wise and righteous lives, and we've been given some applications on what that looks like, the righteous life. Basically, it affects everything, but we've seen the highlights here in our speech, in our work, our general life, and the choices we make. And basically, the only question left to ask is, how on earth are we going to succeed at this? How are we going to succeed with all of the sin that exists in our hearts? How are we going to do this? We're constantly trying, we're constantly failing, we're constantly messing up. Well, that's why our righteousness is not found in us ourselves. That's why our righteousness is found in Christ. The New Testament tells us that Christ took our sin upon him, and he gave us his righteousness. And so the only reason we're able to do any of this at all is because he has given us that clothing of righteousness. And so that's how we do this. That's how we succeed. We realize this isn't in my strength. It's in Christ's strength. It's in his righteousness that I can do these things. And therefore we can go forth and do what he requires of us. And finally, I just want to leave you with a quote from Matthew Henry, the Puritan commentator. He wrote a Bible commentary on every single book of the Bible. You see those brown volumes up there. Those are his. The paper is extremely thin, just in case it doesn't look like much. We must be diligent in getting righteousness and wisdom, but their being received must be attributed to the grace of God alone. So I'll repeat that. We must be diligent in getting righteousness and wisdom, but their being received must be attributed to the grace of God alone. So, guys, depend on Him, work hard, live righteous lives. Amen.